When my husband John and I sold our home of 40 years to move in with our daughter, our friends all said how lucky we were. We pictured ourselves waking up to the laughter of our grandkids, helping out with Sunday dinners, finally getting all the family time we'd always wanted. We thought we were starting our golden years, but we were wrong. It took less than a year for us to realize we'd walked into a minefield of hidden costs and silent resentments. We were about to lose the one thing we never thought we would, our independence. And in doing that, we nearly destroyed the very family we moved to be closer to. I'm telling you our story, not to scare you, but to share a truth that nobody seems to talk about. Moving in with your kids after 70 feels like the right thing to do. It comes from love, but it can be the biggest mistake of your life. It all began with the best intentions, didn't it? Our daughter Sarah noticed John was having a little more trouble with the stairs, and that I was getting tired of the endless upkeep on our old house. "Mom, Dad," she said one evening, "why don't you sell the house and move in with us? The kids would love it, and we could help each other out. It would be perfect." And the picture she painted was perfect. We saw a life where we weren't just visitors, but a real part of our grandkids' daily lives. We'd be there for the school plays and the scraped knees. We'd teach them how to bake my mother's famous apple pie and how to tend a garden, just like John's father taught him. In return, we'd have help with the heavy lifting and the peace of mind that comes with not being alone. So, we sold our house, the place we raised our own children, and marked every milestone for 4 decades, and moved into the beautiful in-law suite they'd prepared for us. The first month was a dream, like one long family reunion. We were a family, all under one roof. We thought we had secured our future, surrounded by love. We had no idea we'd just given it away. The first crack, the silent erosion of independence. The changes didn't happen overnight. They were quiet, like a slow tide pulling the sand out from under your feet. It started with our routine. For 50 years, John and I woke up at 6 a.m. He'd make the coffee, and we'd sit by the window reading the paper and talking. It was our time. But in Sarah's house, mornings were a whirlwind of getting kids to school. Our quiet coffee was replaced by the blare of cartoons and frantic searches for lost backpacks. We were gently told that maybe we could have our coffee a little later, after the chaos died down. We agreed, of course. We didn't want to be in the way. Then came the small losses of choice. I've always loved to cook, but Sarah's kitchen was her domain. When I tried to make dinner one night, I was kindly steered away. "Mom, you relax," she'd say. "I've got it." I wasn't a contributor anymore. I was a guest, and John, a lifelong handyman who always had a project going, found himself with nothing to fix. Every time he picked up a tool, our son-in-law would rush over saying, "Don't worry about that, John. I'll take care of it." They were being kind, but their kindness felt like a cage. We started to feel like we had to ask for permission just to live. Could we have a friend over for cards? Better check if it messes up the kids' nap schedule. Could we go out for the evening? We needed to make sure someone would be home. Losing your autonomy like that, it's a silent killer of the spirit. One day I overheard Sarah on the phone with a friend. "It's great having them," she said, "but it's like having 2 more children to look after." I went into our room and I just cried. I didn't feel like a parent or a grandparent. I felt like a child, a problem to be managed. We learned a painful truth. When you move into your children's home, it is their home. You're just living in it. The second danger, the bill you never see coming. Then there were the costs we never saw coming. Not of money, but of time and expectations. Before we moved, we talked about finances. We agreed to contribute to bills, and it all seemed fair, but the biggest costs were never discussed. We quickly became the default, on-call babysitters. Sarah and her husband started going out more. "You're here anyway," they'd say with a smile. We adore our grandchildren, but we had our own plans, our own friends, our own lives. Slowly, our weekly bridge games and coffee dates started to disappear, replaced by bedtime stories and cartoons. Our social circle, once so vibrant, began to shrink. We became isolated, our world constricting to the four walls of that house. We were no longer John and Mary, with lives of our own. We were just the grandparents who live upstairs. We were a utility, and with that came a slow, simmering resentment. We felt taken for granted, and we could see that flicker of impatience in our daughter's eyes when we weren't available at a moment's notice. The very arrangement that was supposed to bring us closer was building invisible walls between us. The financial plan was clear, but the emotional and social costs were making us bankrupt. If any of this is starting to sound familiar, that subtle loss of your routine, the feeling of being a guest, the unspoken expectations, I want you to take a breath. You are not alone. These are the conversations we're all terrified to have. If you want to hear more honest truths about navigating life after 70, please consider subscribing. We need to talk about these things together. The third storm, when love becomes an obligation. The biggest casualty of this new life was our relationship with our daughter. Before we moved in, our visits were special. We'd show up with arms full of gifts and hugs and spend a wonderful weekend catching up. It was an event, but now the daily friction was grinding away all the joy. Disagreements were constant. Sarah had her way of raising kids, and I had mine. A simple comment from me about too much screen time was met with a defensive look. "Mom, things are different now," she'd say. The unspoken part was loud and clear. "Your opinion isn't welcome." We were constantly walking on eggshells. The house, which used to be filled with laughter, grew thick with tension. We felt guilty for being a burden, and we could sense Sarah's guilt for not being the perfect patient daughter she wanted to be. It's a terrible irony. We moved in to get closer to our family, but the constant closeness was tearing us apart. Love, when it's all mixed up with obligation and no personal space, can start to curdle. We weren't visiting family anymore. We were living in the middle of our differences 24/7, and it was exhausting. Fourth, the breaking point. The moment I knew we'd made a terrible mistake came on a Tuesday afternoon. I was in our suite, and I heard Sarah and her husband talking in the kitchen. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but their voices were so tense. "I can't do this anymore," Sarah said, her voice strained. "I feel like I'm suffocating. I love them, but I have no privacy. My home isn't mine. I feel like I'm failing as a mother and a daughter all at once." Her husband replied, "I know. And your dad? He just looks so lost. He just sits in that chair all day. He used to be so full of life." Hearing those words felt like a punch to the gut. They weren't being cruel. They were just telling the truth. We had become a source of stress in their lives, and in the process we had turned into shadows of our former selves. John, my vibrant, capable husband, was now a man who just sat in a chair, and I, who had managed a home and a family for 50 years, felt useless and invisible. Later that evening, John turned to me, his eyes filled with a sadness I hadn't seen since his own father passed. He said, "Mary, I don't feel like myself anymore. I just feel like a burden." That was it. We went looking for security and connection, and we lost our identities instead. The stress was taking a physical toll. John's blood pressure was up, and I couldn't sleep. We realized that staying wasn't an act of love. It was an act of slow, mutual destruction. The fifth hard truth and the painful decision. Deciding to move out was one of the hardest things we've ever done. The talk with Sarah was full of tears and apologies from everyone. She felt like she had failed us. We told her she hadn't. We had all gone into this with love, but we were just naive about what it really takes to merge lives at this stage. We found a small apartment in a senior living community just a 10-minute drive away. It wasn't our old house, but it was ours. The day we moved our boxes in, I cooked a meal in my own kitchen for the first time in a year. John hung a picture on the wall without having to ask anyone. We both just wept with relief. Here's the biggest lesson we learned. Living separately doesn't mean loving less. For us, it was the only way to preserve our love. Now, when we see our daughter and her family, it's an occasion again. The tension is gone, replaced by real affection. We're no longer a burden, and they're no longer our caretakers. We are simply family. We have our own friends, our own routines, our own lives, and from that place of independence, we can connect with our children out of pure choice, not obligation. Choosing to live with your children after 70 comes from a place of love and a deep desire to be close. But you have to ask yourself what you're giving up in return. Your independence, your identity, your privacy. These aren't luxuries, they are essential to your health and spirit. Protecting your independence is the greatest act of love you can give to both yourself and your children. It allows them to be your children, not your keepers, and it allows you to be the main character in your own story, right to the very end. Before you make this huge decision, have the hard talks. Look at all the options. Like living nearby but not in the same house. Don't trade your life for the illusion of security. Your real security lies in your freedom. What has your experience been? Have you navigated this, either as a parent or a child? Please share your stories in the comments below. Your wisdom could be the lifeline someone else needs to read today. And if this message resonated with you, please like and subscribe. You'll help others find this conversation, and together we can redefine what it means to age with dignity and love.